Hi guys, thanks for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to be working step by step through the Boho Geometric Earrings kit from John Bead. And so here's a quick look at the kit. They're really fun. And so I'm going to go ahead and get the colors out of the bags and lay them out on my mat in order of the patterns. Let me show you the pattern really quick. And this can be downloaded in the description. I'm going to put white, orange, and then metallic teal in order of A, B, and C. And here is a copy of the pattern. And then we're going to work through step by step, and everything in here is illustrated to show you what we're working on and where and how to start it. And so the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and get your thread and cut about a wingspan of it, so 60 inches or so. And start by threading on a beading needle and folding over some length of it to make it more manageable to work with. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start working the pattern from the midpoint of the thread. So leaving about half of the length that you just cut behind as a tail, because we're going to work from the widest row, which in this pattern is also the midpoint. And it helps you not have to add thread. And that also, just makes it a little easier to break down the pattern. So in the case of this specific pattern, the widest row is the row shown right here. And then we're going to be working the row just below it first. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to flip the pattern and work it this way. So here I've highlighted the widest row and the row above it. And so we're just going to create this row with single column peyote stitch and then work brick stitch down from there. So step one is we'll start over here on this side, stringing B, A, going back through the B, then you'll string B and go through the A, so on and so forth. So we'll go ahead and just do that, and then we'll switch to brick stitch after we've completed these two rows. It's just a much faster way to get a brick stitch project started. So I've kind of just almost exclusively switched over to doing this instead of ladder stitching. If you've seen projects like this before, normally you would just ladder stitch just, the one wide row, but I think you'll find that this is much faster because you get two rows done in one swoop. And so let's go ahead and get started. So I've got my beads laid out here, A, B, and C. Bring that over a little bit. And again, we're starting working it basically like this. We're going to string B, A, and then we're going to go back through the B. So we'll pick up a B and then 2A. And again, bring that just to the midpoint of your thread. Leave about half of it, a little less than half behind, because the part we're going to use the tail to work is a little bit less thread needing than the part we're working right now. So here's the beads B and then 2A, and then just bring your needle back up through the B. I'll try to show you closer. And pull tight. And what'll happen when you do that is you'll get the familiar looking little peyote stitch pop. And I usually just hold the tail side a little bit tightly in my fingers. See, I kind of coiled it around just to keep everything tight. And then I'll take this little segment we made and just pinch it, holding it in place. And then just look over here at the pattern. You can see the next bead we need is a B. So that's the color orange. And I'm going to bring that through the color A. See what we did? We picked up a B and we went through the color A. And that's just single column peyote. Super easy and super fast. And so I'm just adjusting so I can hold that whole segment here. Looking over at the pattern, I need to pick up color A. And I'm going to bring color A through the B bead that we just added. So just like that. And then the pattern shows we need to do a B bead. So pick up color B. And if it loosens up on you like that, like it did with, it's one of the reasons I pinch it, but you can always take the thread that's exiting from the last segment you added, or the last bead you added, pull that part and then pull this part. And just make sure it stays tight as you work. All right, so color A. Just like that. And you just want to keep going. Our next color is a color B. So you get the idea for how to start these. This is a pretty long start. It's a very wide piece. So working from the first section here to the end is going to take us a minute. But I just finished adding 1, 2, 3, 4 B's. And what you can see here in the pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4 B. So I know my next one's going to be A. I'm still doing A down here until I get some C's coming in. There's color A. And it really does help to pinch the work together like I've been doing here. So we're going to add our first color A here on the top, just per the pattern. Just going to pick that up. Sorry, I dropped that. Drop that last bead there. And so on. So now I need a color C. Our first color C popping in. There we go. So just keep working like that. The goal is to follow the pattern to the end here. When you get to the end here, you'll have your thread exiting out of that last B. And again, we're working the pattern in this way. All right, so once you've got the full widest row and the row above created using single column peyote stitch, then before you proceed on to starting brick stitch, there's one extra step that I recommend doing that will make the next steps easier, which is to lock in each of these edges by just weaving the thread back through the beads one time. So let me show you what I mean by that on this side. So this is the working side, and I still have my needle on it. I'm just going to go down through the adjacent bead. So this is the bead that's right next to the one my thread is exiting. And then my goal is to get right back to where I was. So I'm going to go down through this third bead in from the right. It's the third A bead there. And that's just so I can make a turn. And there's more than one way to get there. You could go through the second one and turn through the first one, but that kind of locks in both sides of the work without adding bulk on the edge, if that makes any sense. So you see how we did that there? And so now when I go to brick stitch, I've got a secured edge. I'm going to do the same thing on this side with the tail thread. So this is the tail side. And so far I've done the same thing. I'm going to add one little difference. When I use the tail thread, I'm going to be working from this side. So instead of going back up through the B bead where I was, I'm just going to turn. And then just head out of this bead, because that's where I want to be when I start the next section. All right, so in summary, I've got this thread here, the working side, and I just did that little weave around to make the edge a little stronger. And then I did the same thing with the tail thread, but I wove the tail thread to exit from the bottom, the widest row, the bottom A bead there. And we're just going to leave this one for now because that's for when we work the other half of the design. From here, we're going to start doing brick stitch according to the pattern on this side. So here's where we were. We finished all that. And what we need to do now is just create our first section of brick stitch. So we're going to start with 2 B beads and go under the second thread bridge. So you'll come out of this bead here, string 2 B beads, go under the second thread bridge and back up. And then there's a step I'm going to show that we can do to tighten this up if it's a little loose, and then we'll go on and add bead by bead through the end of the row. All right, so from here, I'm going to grab 2 B beads. So here's 2 B beads. And we're going to skip the first thread bridge and go on to the second. And then come back up to the second bead. And you'll get this, which is okay, except for, you see how the edge bead is kind of like leaning in? I want to straighten that out. So to do that, I'm going to go down through this bead here. And then I'm going to go under the first thread bridge. It's hard to see it, but basically just if you go between the 2 beads below, it'll help you catch it. And this is optional. It just makes this edge bead sit a little bit more flat just by doing that. So once you've done that, come back up through that second bead. And there you go. So you just want to get that to sit like that. And what we're going to do next is pick up 1 more B bead. From here on out, you'll just work with 1 bead at a time and just go under whatever the next thread bridge is. So we technically worked in both the first and second thread bridges already with 2 beads. Now we're going to work 1 bead into the third. And we're going to do that the same way through the rest of the row. So let's do a few together. There's that one. And of course, keep looking at your pattern and make sure that you add the right bead in the right order. So my pattern says B bead. And let's look at the pattern and see what the next bead is. So we did these 3, and then we did a 4th B bead, and now I'm working down here now. So you've got these 3, 4, and then we need to do each of these. All right, so that's the end of the row there. So basically what I did is I just worked that first row of brick stitch. So let's start another one together. So we're going to work the next row up from the one we just finished, and also that one starts with 2B. So I've got 2B beads, and once again I'm going to go under the second thread bridge. And come up through the second bead. And you'll probably get that, right? And so what I usually do is just go back through the last bead. So just like that. And you can come up under the first thread bridge. It'll still work even if you don't do that, but both ways work. So you can just come back up through the second bead. It basically just makes them pop together like this. Let me show you. And so that's just if you want to. Naturally, when you put the next row on top, it might make the bead kind of flatten anyway. But my experience so far is that it's a lot better looking when I do it that way. So I've been doing it that way, but experiment and see how it looks. I'm gonna flip my work. I've been flipping my work to work from left to right, just because that's easier for my hand. And luckily, this is a symmetrical pattern, so right to left, left to right. The pattern has a midpoint that either side is the same. If you're working, right and left, left, right, top and bottom is different. So that's why this pattern's like probably one of the easier ones that we have in our earring kits. It's a great starter. And so there's my first 4 beads. And I'm just going to finish the row and do an A bead, 2 C beads, another A bead, and 4 more B. And I'm going to carry on like that, creating rows like I just showed you, all the way to the top of the pattern. So I'm going to turn the camera back on when I get here so that I can show building this little point at the bottom. All right, so we've worked the entire pattern here, just using the same brick stitch method that we demoed in the first 2 rows, where you add 2, and then you complete by adding 1, putting 1 bead under every thread bridge, essentially, and you get this natural decrease into a little pyramid point. And I've stopped at the last 3 beads here. And what I'm going to do here at the end is create a point that has 1 bead offset. So start with just picking up 2, just like we've been doing. And it's 2 bead beads. And you only have 2 thread bridges. Sorry. I'm going to go under the second one right here. And pull that tight. And then come up through the second bead. All right, and so you'll get that with a little offset bead there. And normally, you know, we'd go back through it and straighten it out. But before I do that, I'm going to pick up 1 more bead. And this bead, I'm just going to string it onto the thread here, and then carry on with straightening out that bead. And when I do that, automatically that bead I just picked up is just going to sit sideways. So that's our goal. I am going to go ahead and do that little straightening out method where we pick up the thread bridge. And in this case, it's the first one relative to when we were positioning that last row there. Just go under it. And I'm doing one thing a little different. I'm going back up through the same bead instead of going through the second one. And that's just, you know, actually it kind of wouldn't matter whichever way you wanted to do that. But I did that so I can go back through the bead, which I could do from either side anyway. The whole goal there is just to kind of reinforce this connection. You want to be able to go back through it. So back through this little bead here at the bottom. So whichever way, you know, just want to get through and anchor both of those 2 beads in that last little, these 2 beads here. Make sure just each of those is anchored into a thread bridge. That will make this connection strong enough to support the weight of the charm that we're going to put on it. Now I only reinforced it twice, and you could reinforce it a 3rd time, but the thread's pretty thick, and I want to be able to get my jump ring through it. That's the next step we're going to do at the end, is we're going to put a jump ring through that bead. So I don't want it to be too full with thread. So I am stopping with 2 passes, and I'm going to weave it in really good. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and weave around. So go through, let's go through this middle bead here. And then just carry on stitching through, make some turns. Let me show you one turn so you know what I mean. So here's what a turn would look like. You just go through one of the beads that's right next to it. Make sure that thread gets hidden. Go up through another bead here, and so on. I'm going to make maybe 1 more turn, and then we'll trim it. All right, so just did a little bit of weaving in and made sure you can't see anywhere I did turns. And the way I did that is you just kind of spin the beads, just kind of spin them around. And I'm going to go ahead and trim that. So the best way to trim it is just use some scissors. You can use a burner if you want, but the scissors way is to just kind of pull on the thread so much so that it would pick up the piece if you let it, and then use your scissors to push down while you're making that cut. And it'll just get that bead nice and clear there. All right, so this side is done. Remember the tail thread we left behind? Let's switch to that, and let's use that to start the top part of the design. So this is the top part where the ear wire is going to go when we finish it. So I'm going to get a new needle here and just fold down a little bit just to make it manageable to work with it. And what we've got to do next is just take another quick look at where we are in the pattern so we know where to start from here. So we finished all this. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and flip it to work up here. Here's our thread right now. I'm going to come out of the bead we're coming out of, go down to the next one, and up through the next one. And then I'm going to string A and C beads. and go under the second thread bridge. And that'll give us the little indent we need. So this is an indented decrease right here. So you want to go down through this bead here, up through the adjacent, and then go ahead and give it a spin. So make sure the little turn we did doesn't show. And once that looks good to you, you want to pick up, the pattern is indicating an A and a C bead. So these two beads here. And so which thread bridge? So the bead the bead your thread's exiting is the third one in. There's a thread bridge that's right after that bead, and then one after that. I'm going to go through that one after that. So this one right here. Okay, and pull through. Up through the C bead. And you'll probably get something that looks like that. So just go back through the first bead here. And if desired, go into the thread bridge, but I want to show also that you can just jet right through that second bead again. And that also does the trick. The only reason to go under the thread bridge really is just for strength. But here is having not done that, and still works. I did that a few times down here when I was making my base here, because that took quite a lot of stitching, and it's just a little speed up step. Okay, so we just finished that, and what we have left to do is just repeat the pattern. And so we're going to build from here's where we just finished. We're just going to finish with all these C beads, ending with an A bead, and you can either keep count just by counting how many C beads you added, or just note that when you get to the thread bridge above those first two white beads in the pattern there, that's the spot where you put your last C, and then you're going to put an A after that. So let's go ahead and get going on that, and meet me back right here at the end. I'll show you guys. I'll stop when I get to like right here. The last C bead. It's going to go right here. All right, so right here, one last A bead. And that completes the indented row. So it's that easy. You just start it a little inward and then just finish over here. And so what we're going to do next is just build regular good old decreasing brick stitch, which is you start with the 2 and go under the second thread bridge, and then each of these subsequent beads is under the next thread bridge. You end with the last one, and that will naturally decrease us. Again, we're going to meet up here and do the same thing there that we did before, which is we're going to make the top bead turned. So the same process we did at the bottom for the top beads so that it would stay sideways. And that's all you got to do. And then we'll meet back here and put the findings on. All right, so almost done. I thought I would just go ahead and film this top part again, just in case. I know we did it here at the bottom, but if you want to see it again, you can see it here, or you can just skip ahead. I'll put the timestamps in the description below. But there's the 2 beads that, let's bring the pattern over, that represent those top 2 A beads right now. So again, I've just picked up those 2 for the moment, going under the second thread bridge there. Oops, I lost my needle. Here we go, I lost my needle there, sorry. So again, it was under the second thread bridge. I'm just going to come up through that bead, the second bead right there, see? All right, and so we get a little wonky thing. Let's pick up one more A bead. Go back down through the first bead here. All right, and so it pops into like a sideways position. And what I'm going to do next is try to go under the thread bridge that is below that bead. Best way to do that really is just to kind of get between the two beads that are sitting below it. Once you've got that, just come back up through that bead. And it should pop right into place for you. Look really nice just like that. So once again, I'm going to go through this bead here at the top. And down through this one. All right, so from here is the weaving in step, and it takes a minute, but it's, it's an important step. So just go through some beads, make a few turns, weave around, and then trim the thread. Here we go. I just did a bunch of weaving around. Actually went all the way down, all the way back up, and I'm just going to trim it. All right. So there's our goal. Just get that built. And from here, we're going to put some findings. So in your findings pack, you want to find the following items. Find 2 jump rings, 1 charm, and 1 ear wire. And let's get those ready. And then to put these on, you're going to want to use some chain nose pliers, and if you have them, some bent nose pliers. So let me show you what those are. So this is a pair of chain nose pliers, and this is a kind of a wider version. Chain nose pliers come in both a pointy version, like I'm showing here, and a square nose version. They both have flat interior, right? But I go with the wider one for jump rings because it gives me a little more to hold on to the side of the circle of the jump ring. So we'll show that in a second here. And then I really like using bent nose pliers for the other side of my jump rings. Okay. So start with one of the jump rings and find the seam on it. And it's just that the seam is the open part. Use your chain nose pliers to hold one side of the jump ring. With the seam, typically I put the seam facing away from me. And then take the bent nose pliers. And what you want to do is open in a lateral motion. So we're going to just kind of turn one of the pliers, 45 degrees, right? So just kind of like that. Not quite 45 degrees. You just want to open it just enough. Right? And I'll keep hold of it with my pliers. Yeah, let's start with the bottom. So very carefully, it is possible to break your bead. These jump rings do fit these beads, but if for some reason it's not going through for you, there's 2 reasons why it might not be going through. One is if you're snagging the thread. In that case, just pull the jump ring out and try again. Or just take a really close look at your jump ring. One side might be a little thicker than the other. When they cut jump rings, one side gets a little bit of a burr on it, and one side is a little smoother. So 2 things you can try there. But in most cases for me, it just goes right through, unless I've snagged thread. So that one worked out really nicely. And before you close it, working here on the bottom, right? You want to grab your charm and place your charm on. And this is where the bent nose pliers really shine for me because they can hold one side like that. Just a little easier to get in there. See, we close that jump ring. So that side is done. I'm going to do that same thing again here at the top. So here's another jump ring. Now holding one side, I found the seams up here. Open that up. And then just go through the bead. And pop that ear wire on there. And then using those bent nose pliers to get it started, close that jump ring. And then sometimes I'll come along and use the wider side to just adjust with some strength, which is this is like a little wiggle motion, see, with the jump ring just to get it nice and closed. Sorry about that. All right, there's our earring. Really pretty. Thanks for checking out the video, and I hope you enjoy making your earrings.